U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are meeting in Alaska on August 15th. As you watch this, that meeting may still be ongoing, and it carries the potential to alter the entire course of the Ukraine war. But mystery surrounds the event. Why is it happening? What will be discussed? And what exactly does Trump hope to gain by inviting Putin onto U.S. soil while Russia continues its brutal campaign in Ukraine? These are the questions we'll explore in this breakdown of the Alaska peace talks, what they mean, why they matter, and what's truly at stake. For weeks, Trump has been pushing hard to end the Russian invasion. In mid-July, he gave Putin a 50-day deadline to agree to a ceasefire, warning that failure would result in punishment, most likely sweeping new sanctions in the form of secondary tariffs on countries still buying Russian gas and oil. By July 28, his patience was wearing thin, and he announced that Putin had 10 of 12 days left to make a decision. That deadline has now expired. No ceasefire is in place. Which brings us to August 15th and the reason for this Alaska meeting. The Kremlin initially brushed off Trump's threats, but spokesman Dmitry Peskov did call them very serious, while noting that Moscow needed time to analyze them. That analysis has now turned into face-to-face negotiations. It appears Putin prefers to sit down with Trump directly, sidestepping any sense of being cornered by deadlines. Other analysts believe Putin isn't particularly scared of more sanctions, but instead sees this as an opportunity to manipulate Trump in person, possibly steering him away from his recent shows of support for Ukraine. Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's former president and prime minister, dismissed Trump's ultimatum as a theatrical performance back in July, declaring, "The world shuddered, Europe was disappointed, Russia didn't care." These bold words, while likely meant to project strength, also reveal how Putin's inner circle echoes his own mindset. Yet, there may be a deeper reason behind Putin's willingness to meet. The sheer scale of bloodshed is staggering. United 24 Media recently pointed out that Ukraine continues to suffer immense losses, its civilians killed, children abducted, entire towns wiped out. Any agreement reached in Alaska could decide the fate of millions, the outlet warned. Statistics confirm this horror. By July 2025, nearly 14,000 Ukrainian civilians have been killed and more than 35,000 injured since the war began. Meanwhile, CNN reported that Ukraine had already sustained close to 400,000 military casualties by June, with tens of thousands dead. Russia has paid a horrific price as well. Ukraine's Ministry of Finance estimates Russia has suffered over 1 million military casualties since the war began. When both sides count their dead in the hundreds of thousands, the pressure to at least talk becomes undeniable. So why Alaska? Officially, no venue has been confirmed, but all signs point to Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, the only location secure enough to host two of the world's most powerful leaders. Strategically, Alaska is close to Russia across the Bering Strait, making it a logical choice, according to Putin's aide Yuri Ushakov. Beyond logistics, Alaska carries symbolic weight. It was once Russian territory before being sold to the U.S. in 1867. Some Russian officials, like Kirill Dmitriev, have even referred to Alaska as an American of Russian origin, suggesting Moscow sees the venue as a subtle nod to its past. But the U.S. likely chose the location for another reason: power projection. Elmendorf-Richardson is home to F-22 Raptors, C-17 Globemasters, E-3 Sentry AWACS, and Black Hawk helicopters. Having Putin sit down in the shadow of American military might be part of the psychological game. The next question: what exactly will be discussed? Trump has framed the meeting as a listening exercise, saying he'll know within minutes whether a deal is possible. For Trump, the goal is to test Putin's stance, whether he still clings to total control of Ukraine, or whether the staggering death toll has forced him to soften. Russia, meanwhile, is expected to push hard for recognition of its territorial gains, about 20% of Ukraine's land, including Luhansk, Donetsk, and Crimea. Putin also wants guarantees that Ukraine never joins NATO. Reports suggest Trump may even raise the idea of land swaps, floating the possibility that Ukraine and Russia trade territories to secure peace. But Ukraine has already rejected this outright. President Zelensky stated plainly that Ukraine's borders are enshrined in its constitution, unalterable, not up for negotiation. Putin's interest in land goes beyond geopolitics. It's about minerals. The Donbass region, much of it now under Russian control, contains nearly 40% of Ukraine's metal and mineral reserves, resources valued at around $350 billion. Rumors have swirled that Trump may offer Putin access to Alaskan resources, including oil and rare earths, as part of a potential deal. Combined with sanctions relief and territorial recognition, such offers would be a massive prize for Moscow. But history casts doubt on whether Putin would honor any agreement. He has violated over 20 ceasefires with Ukraine since 2014 and ignored the Minsk agreements that were supposed to end fighting years ago. Any deal risks becoming just another pause before renewed aggression. Still, one wild possibility lingers: the ICC arrest warrant for Putin. Since 2023, Putin has avoided traveling to most countries for fear of being detained. Technically, the U.S. is not bound by the Rome Statute, making an arrest unlikely. Yet, even the faintest chance adds tension to this Alaska summit. And then comes the elephant in the room: Ukraine itself. Notably absent from these talks, President Zelensky and his government have not been invited. Despite his repeated calls to meet Putin directly, the Kremlin refuses to acknowledge him, fearing it would legitimize Ukraine's leadership. Instead, Zelensky can only outline his principles from afar. Any talks must include Ukraine, sanctions must be strengthened if Russia refuses a ceasefire, and security guarantees must prevent Russia from blocking NATO membership. Above all, Ukraine insists, no land swaps. In the end, this Alaska meeting is about more than two men sitting across a table. It's about whether peace is even possible, or if this is simply another stage for Putin to play his games. The stakes are enormous: millions of lives, the future of Ukraine's borders, and the question of whether brute force can still redraw maps in the 21st century.